We're good to go. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hey.
All right. Hey, thanks for coming. All right. I'm Gabe All, and this is Bill Karagunis.
Hi, everyone.
And we're going to talk about the Insider program. We're going to give you a little bit of an inside, behind-the-scenes story, some history, as well as some inside peeks of the day-to-day, what it's like to actually flight builds and the tools that we use and the people that we work with. So who are we? Really, I'll talk about this in the context of when we started Windows 10, because we started on this journey of working in a more open way and sharing builds with insiders in the Windows 10 timeframe. At the time, I was the GM for a team called Fundamentals, and Bill was the director of program management for that team.
Yeah.
And kind of more importantly than what we were doing then was where we came from. We both come from a customer service background. I started in product support. Bill did years working with customers in consulting. And we both, when we had this opportunity to do this program, we really jumped at it and thought, what a great way to connect with our customers and to understand, what their needs and concerns were, and have their help in helping us shape the program.
Yeah.
So, the button, in terms of who we are, it's actually important to talk about the button. The button for me is this sort of ceremonial thing, but Bill is actually the button.
I'm not the button.
He's the actual button.
I press the button from time to time.
His team is the one that actually is responsible for taking the decision to flight a build and actually do the publishing of it. And so I guess, in that regard, I'm sort of, ceremonial figurehead, and he's the actual power. So I'm like the queen, and he's the prime minister or something. But it is a really fun process for us. We have a lot of people involved in the decision to flight builds, and it's something that we're really proud of when we get it right, and we're really proud of the frequency we've been able to get with the new series this year. I'm going to talk about the beginning and sort of go back in time a little bit and talk about the program. The first thing that most people saw for the Windows Insider program was the announcement, the first announcement around Windows 10 and the unveiling of the Insider program, which was in September of 2014. And then the day after, we released our first preview build. And that's kind of what we talked about publicly to the world. But it really got started a long time before that, in March of 2014, when we published the priorities memo for Windows 10. So this is an engineering planning memo about what this release is going to be about. And a big part of that memo was really about, hey, we need to have better engagement with customers. We need to have a better way to get their feedback early. And that was a key part of that priorities memo. And the Fundamentals team was really the team that kind of led the charge on the work to support that. And so we did our first, sort of presentation of our plans. We went through a planning process on the team, and then did a bunch of work to say, here's how we think we're going to execute on this. It included the feedback app, the program itself, the definition of the program, and it also included how we thought we were going to be able to scale to handle all this feedback and channel it back to the engineering team. And Bill, what was the scale that we had planned for?
We had planned for 250,000 insiders.
250,000.
With a max in our wildest dreams of 400,000.
Yeah. So we were dreaming big, 250,000 insiders, and that was really the number that we needed to hit in order to have, if we had a random distribution of 250,000 people participating, we'd hit statistically significant number of populations, different hardware in different regions, and things like that. And then 400,000 was sort of our upside, where we thought we'd feel really happy, we'd have kind of a buffer and get enough input. And we actually designed the program to initially stop at 400,000. So nobody saw it. The screen that we actually, the code that we wrote that said, thank you for your interest, but we're not accepting anybody else into the program. And the reason is that a week before we announced the program to the world, Terry said, no, this has to be for everyone. This is about democracy. This is about getting all of our customers to give us feedback and input and to help us shape the product. And you guys need to go figure out how you can open this up for anybody who wants to participate. And that was a busy week for us.
Yeah.
We actually had we threw away a bunch of UI that we now didn't need, where we said, hey, no, thank you. And we had to go and scale all of our systems to be able to handle this feedback. And we were still, we weren't sure how many people were actually going to, show interest and sign up and participate.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty hectic week. In fact,
I mean, like, I remember being on email with some of you might know who Scott Guthrie is. He heads up the cloud division for Microsoft. And I remember sending him an email saying, I think I'm going to need more capacity, dude. And Scott, being who he is, like, sure, we're on it. Like, let's light up a whole bunch more of instances in Azure. And we were like, good to go. And we were like, okay, let's see if it all hangs together.
Yeah. And of course, in March of 2015, so a year ago, we hit 3 million insiders. We made it to 1 million in the first couple weeks of the program being open. And of course, today we have over 7 million Windows insiders that are participating in the program. So the interest has been really humbling for us. It's huge. It shows how many people are passionate about Windows and want to have their voice heard in terms of making it the operating system for them. We have insiders in all countries in the world except for 2. We're still trying to go after those 2 and get some insiders there. But we do have insiders in Antarctica and Vatican City. So I'm hoping that the Pope is an insider. He hasn't sent me feedback personally, but we'll see. Maybe. We did a survey recently and looked at just sort of demographics of the insider population. About 46% are in a tech job. IT, software development, or engineering. About 54% are, they're joining the program because they're fans. They love Windows. And they cited I love Windows as a top reason for being an insider. 20% are students, and a fifth of those are still in high school. And so we've got a lot of people that are, young people that are really interested in using Windows every day, and that's pretty awesome. 95% say they're PC gamers, 36% are Xbox gamers. So gaming is obviously a really important thing for us to get right on Windows in general, but also in the Insider program. And then 89% are satisfied with tweets to and from me. I'm happy about that. I don't know if that was lowered expectations and they were happy, but whatever. I'll take it. I'll take what I can get. So why the Insider program? Well, of course, we have this long history of beta programs at Microsoft, but that's kind of a lame reason. That's not the real reason we said, hey, we need to do this thing and make it something special. We have this complexity challenge. The Windows ecosystem is huge. It's diverse. We have 8.5 million unique devices that we know about, 21 million plus unique apps. And then if you just take sort of the number of configurations you have to be able to deal with on that, and you do the combinatorics on it, it easily exceeds the number of atoms in the observable universe. So greater than 10 to the 80th possible combinations of things that you can do in the Windows ecosystem. Of course, in the real world, they cluster much more nicely than that. We get this nice Pareto curve. And so we can actually look at a situation where 250,000 random systems can give us great diversity. But it is still a hugely complex problem. Things that are that we can test for in our test labs, cannot map what's in the real world. And so we needed this ability to get builds out and have you use them and tell us what's working and what's not working, get crash data, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a huge part of the program. But really the thing that was the key thing for us was this latency challenge. This challenge that by the time we had engineered the product and had given it to you in the past, it was kind of too late to deal with the feedback. If something didn't land well, if, for example, we didn't have a start menu, it was too late to get that feedback and to really incorporate it and to change our plans. And so that latency issue is really the key thing. If you look at the history of Windows development, I'll start from Windows 7 here, and you look at the time it took us in Windows 7 to go from the start of development to the point where we had our first public preview. It's the blue bar. You can see that it's most of the engineering cycle. The time spent was kind of behind closed doors, and people didn't get to see the product that we were working on. In Windows 7, we had 2 public previews. In Windows 8, the shape of that distribution is really largely the same. Most of the time spent was was in, behind closed doors in Redmond. And by the time we did 3 public previews, most of the engineering, the opportunity we had to take feedback and do engineering changes was too late. 8.1 was a fast release, but it still had the same shape. So 1 public preview there, most of the engineering done in Redmond. Windows 10 looks very, very different. When you look at how we worked on Windows 10, we did have a good, sort of head of steam built up around the amount of work we had before the first preview, but the ratio of the engineering cycle that was spent in the open versus behind closed doors was very, very different. We had 15 public PC previews and 7 mobile previews before we launched. This is the 10240, the build we launched in July. The build we launched in October, 10586, 6 public PC previews and 6 mobile previews before launch. Again, shorter cycle, but still lots of previews. And then you look at the 14000 series, the one that we're working on right now. We've done 16 previews for a PC and 7 for mobile so far. So in this short time frame, we've actually done more previews than we did in all of Windows 10, the 10240 development period. So, and you can see that we continue to sort of just compress that time that we work behind closed doors and get stuff out to you faster and sooner so that you can give us feedback on it.
And Gabe, an interesting factoid is it's been since December of 2014. So every single month from December 2014 to now, we've had a preview, we've had a flight out to insiders.
Yeah, no longer than 30 days.
No longer than 30 days from December 2014.
2014, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah. So what happens behind the scenes? So I'm going to let Bill talk about what happens the day in the life of our flight operations.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain a little bit, shall we? And if the clicker works, yay. I wanted to just start off just quickly, just to give you a little bit of a framing of some of the components of the machinery behind what drives the Insider program. As Gabe mentioned, we had systems before that had long latency, long lead times before we sent anything to the world. So we spent time back in early 2014, essentially augmenting our machinery to get us in a mode where we can actually push stuff out in a fast way. Now, you all know and love the Insider program, so standing up the program, building the pieces into the product itself so that you could go in the product and basically become an insider and make your device be part of the Insider program, building all of that machinery. And then also the feedback systems. You've all seen the feedback hub, the feedback apps, and all of that machinery within our infrastructure and our engineering system to support and drive all of that.
Yeah, the release processes in Windows 8 took about 2 weeks by the time we were done to be able to have everything staged and available on Windows Update for distribution.
Yeah.
So, and now it's
we click the button, it's in hours before everything's basically propped to Windows Update. And you folks are getting the latest greatest bits. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is, and this is familiar to many folks that are part of Insiders, but I want to make sure that everyone can sort of see the full scope of what I call the ring theory. People, Insiders have seen what we refer to as the fast ring, the slow ring, but there's actually some internal rings as well, and they're sort of denoted as blue and green. And the way to think about it is, when we build, the build goes to what we call the canaries within our internal engineering team. The canaries spend some time with that build, and then what we do is we have terminology which we refer to as ring promotion criteria, which is the bar that you have to achieve before you move to the next ring, and so on and so forth. One of the key things that we've done very recently is, based on the feedback, what you'll notice an anomaly in the colors here. Up until probably the beginning of this calendar year, we used to go through Canary, Self-Host, and Self-Host means the rest of our engineering team, and then we would go to the rest of Microsoft, and then we would go to the Insiders. We made the decision a few months ago to say, you know what? The Insiders are telling us they want builds earlier, they want builds faster. Oops, I clicked forward. Don't look at that yet. So what we did was we moved the rings around. So Windows Insiders are actually getting builds before the rest of Microsoft. That's how quick the cadence is right now, because we love the feedback. We love the input that we get out of the community. It's super important to us. And I'll drill into what we mean by ring promotion criteria in a sec as well. The other thing we did, now I'll go into this, some of you would have also noticed the release preview ring. That's something we stood up a couple of months ago as well. And the purpose was we had a lot of feedback from people saying, you know, I want to be an insider, but I want to run a released OS. I'd love to see what's happening with your apps and your platform and give you feedback on the apps that are coming through into the program. Hey, do you have something for me? So we made the decision to let a set of insiders choose to be on the latest released version of Windows 10, but still be getting the apps and getting updates in that regard too. And that's what we refer to as the release preview ring, which right now has the November update of Windows 10 running in there. Okay, I mentioned ring promotion criteria. What is this funky new this new acronym here? It's essentially the set of things we look at before we push a build to the next ring. And it comprises of, we look at adoption, how many machines are actually running this particular build? And is there some upgrade issue? One of the things we care a lot about is, as part of Windows as a service, is our ability to update machines is sacrosanct. We need to make sure that it's all running, it all works well. We look at things like reliability. We want to make sure that there isn't some major reliability issue that's going to hit a big part of the population. We look at stuff like responsiveness and power use. Same sort of thing, is the build okay from a performance perspective? And has something changed which could potentially impact battery life? We think a lot about scenario completion. Our goal is that insiders can live on this build. We have thousands of people in our engineering team which live on our builds on a daily basis. It's part of the culture of the engineering team. You've got to live and breathe and run your own dog food. But we want insiders. In fact, I personally think of the insider community as sort of an extension of our engineering team, that sort of close. So we want to make sure that things like you're able to print, make sure that that still works, and various other scenarios, they keep going. Compatibility, we have 20 million plus apps in the Windows ecosystem. We want to make sure that, your version of Quicken from 2004 keeps running. We have a lot of people that worry about that sort of thing. We want to make sure that all, works correctly. And finally, feedback. One of the things that is probably not obvious to a lot of the insiders is we look at feedback on a ring-by-ring basis. It becomes part of our criteria to make sure that this build is ready to go to the next phase. So we use that as a listening channel internally, as well as the feedback that comes through from insiders. And if we sort of see something that's concerning there, we'll pause and we'll stop.
Yeah, in fact, the feedback app that you all use is exactly how engineers inside Windows and inside Microsoft are sending their feedback on the builds. So we actually have, we can sort the channels so that we can see what's coming on a day-to-day basis from people in the Canary Ring before we decide to make a promotion to Selphos. Yep. But it's the exact same system. In fact, we by using the system for ourselves, we're actually able to find problems with it and scale it to make it work much better for insiders.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're essentially using part of our engineering system when you're using that app. So, when everything's good, the mythical button is pressed, and as Gabe mentioned before, the button kind of looks like that. We schedule the promotion to the next ring. Okay, one of the other questions that we get quite often is, well, how long, how fresh are these bits that you're giving us? And what I wanted to do here was just to sort of like talk about a week in the life of what we call the flight operations process. And I've simplified this a little bit to focus on the flight that we tend to target for Windows Insiders. I thought it was interesting to sort of go through it a little bit. So, end of day Friday, we'll typically get the final sort of check-ins for the build that we're sort of targeting for Insiders. And then Saturday morning, the build is ready. Tell us a little bit about what the build looks like and like the magnitude of the build, Gabe.
Yeah, so our build system is pretty phenomenal. It's 3 acres of build machines. It's over 75,000 systems. We move exabytes of data back and forth in order to build every day. Because we don't just build once. We build 300 branches across all SKUs, all languages, and so The build that Bill's talking about here is sort of what comes from our top-level branch, our release branch, where all of the changes across the team, thousands of engineers, changes are sort of rolling up to it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that one builds once a day. But we have 300 of those, nested below that, and we have to build all those, and those all get flighted too. In fact, part of the internal, when you opt into the Canary Ring internally, you opt in not just in the ring, but the branch that you want to be in. So you could pick your feature team's Canary branch and get that build flighted to you every day as an automatic thing.
Yeah. So we have the build Saturday morning. There's a whole battery of automated testing that goes on to make sure that, like we run a lot of scenarios. We've got like a huge amount of automation in all of this infrastructure. And then on Saturday afternoon, for this build that we're targeting for insiders, there's an automatic propagation to what we call the Canary Ring, as I mentioned before. And the reason why we do that is we want it to propagate to people's machines over the next day or so, people that are part of the Canary Ring over the next day or so that by Monday we've got usage, we've got data, we can make decisions about, hey, is this thing ready to go to the next phase? So it's growing over there over the weekend. And then on Monday, we have this process. We have a daily flight operations meeting. We're running a service. We have a flight operations meeting where we look at what's happening with all of the flights that are going on, and we make decisions around, is everything going well? Do we need to put our foot on the brake? Do we need to push harder here, et cetera, et cetera? So on Monday afternoon, we look at all of the things that come up with our ring promotion criteria, and we make the call, do we go to the next ring? And typically, as you've seen, certainly over the last few months, the decision has been yes, keep going, put your foot on the accelerator. So then we push it to the Self-Host ring, which is the rest of the engineering team inside WDG. On Tuesday, same thing, same meeting. We look at how's it going? Does everything look good? Is it trending right for us to sort of like flight it the next day? And then on Wednesday, we make the final decision about, okay, we're ready to go. Folks have put together the blogs. Basically, the infrastructure is ready. Folks are basically sort of looking, and then we push the real button to send it out. So, what you're seeing here is 5 to 6 days before the final code check-ins came into that build, before it's in your hands. That's the sort of cadence that we're sort of going for now. There's a bit of a difference between that and 2 years. And then, so it's gone to WibFast, and then on Thursday at Flight Ops, we essentially do for everything that goes public, we'll do essentially a postmortem. Is there something we learned? Is there something we need to add into our infrastructure, our systems? Is there new coverage we need, et cetera, et cetera? But that's a simplistic view of this one particular flight. We're always running in parallel. This flight operations meeting isn't for one flight. It's for a number of things. So we have canary builds every single day because we're always looking for an option. If there is a problem, for example, in something to do with the Saturday build, we're going to look for another one. We're going to look for either Mondays or the one before. And we also have self-host builds, stuff that's always propagating through the system. So we're always like, pushing, looking to see what's going on. I can't have this talk without paying homage to the hardworking people, some of which are over here, that actually run Flight Ops. You can see on the left-hand side there is a set of people that look pretty relaxed. There's cookies on the table. I'm certainly carrying my share of Flight Ops cookies. And as you can see, sort of other folks here, like driving through. Gabe's there. I'm hiding in the back, my head down, as part of Flight Ops. And here's another set of people that are happy campers that are basically sort of working for the Insider program every single day and making sure that we're pushing.
There's a lot of moving pieces that need to come together for Flight Ops. So each of the people that you see there are responsible for some aspect of the process. So Savita, who's at the right here, and Amanda in the top photo, they are on our release team. So they're actually responsible for ensuring that all the media that comes out of the build process is complete and correct, and that we can actually have something that's ready to flight. We have folks from our product support team. We have people that many of you know, Jason Howard from Twitter, North Face Hiker. He's the gentleman in the black sweater there, and he's sort of like
inspired by you, Gabe.
Yeah, That's right. He's got my haircut. That's for sure. And so he's a part of Flight Ops every day, and he's taking back in all that he's hearing on Twitter and forums and through other community channels. And there's just a ton of different people that are involved. People that are responsible for our performance measurements, for reliability. Tom Baxter in the far back runs the feedback technology team. So all these folks have a unique perspective on every build that goes out, and they're looking at a specific channel of data. You sort of think about the NASA flight ops and how there's people that are responsible for a very particular aspect of getting those flights off the ground. And we work in a very similar way.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, there's a whole bunch of people on the phone as well. So it is a similar kind of process. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, okay, how do you keep an eye on all of this stuff? What do we do? What do we look at? And funnily enough, we have something which we call Mission Control, which is our one-stop shop for everything to do with our pre-release flighting system. It serves as all of the views that we have into the system, as well as the thing that sort of helps us orchestrate and push stuff to the world. It's also our ops dashboard too, so making sure that the whole service is running and clean. You can see one of the views here. This one is essentially the percentage of the population by build in the pre-release aspect, and you can sort of see a couple of drill downs into the specific rings. We also, I mentioned before, we care a lot about adoption, how many people have adopted. And we have visualizations like the bottom one here around how long a build has been in a ring, and sort of starts to become obvious the weeks that we haven't pushed something out. And then a view that I look at a lot is our adoption frequency. This is the machine that's actually telling us how quickly our build's getting out to, in this case, our internal engineering organization. And I care about this a lot because I want to make sure that within 2 to 3 days, the population internally has got the build. And you can sort of see that once we push the button for the next one for our internal engineering team, it quickly atrophies down and the new one spikes up.
That's worth talking about for a second too as well. This spike that Bill is describing here is kind of the healthy spike for our flighting system, where we see a new build released. A lot of systems take it automatically and deploy it on your everyday. This is actually my everyday Surface Book that I'm using here for the presentation, or for test machines. If we see a spike that doesn't look like an 80+% uptake in the first 3 days, we think something's wrong. That's the modern sort of way of working. It used to take us 30 to 60 days in the past to actually get a build that we wanted to have out to all of our self-host people internally before it actually percolated all the way through. Before we had these flighting systems and could deploy them automatically and get people always working on the fresh builds. So this has actually helped our engineering process greatly as well, because most of your developers in the room, that if somebody's giving you a bug report on something that's 30 to 60 days old, and you've spent 2 months working on that code, it's probably code that you've changed quite a bit. And so having this fast uptake actually helps us build the product in a much better way, find bugs, squash them sooner. And so this is a hugely important view.
Keeping everyone current. I mean, even our execs and VPs are part of this.
We actually have a report card on all the execs and VPs to make sure that they're getting builds, and we'll have people that will go to their office and say, "Hey, do you have a problem? Yeah, why are you on the freshest build?" And so it actually has been a really fun sort of cultural thing. I shouldn't be. It is inside the program, right? It's like you guys are all safe to talk about here, right? But yeah, it's super fun for us to just have that view, and everybody really has a great time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, I mentioned before about the scenarios. We care a lot about. We want to make sure, like I mentioned, like the builds that you get, we want you to be able to use them and use them as your daily driver. This is one of the views which basically sort of looks at key scenarios. This particular one happens to be our core user interface, core UX. And you can, if you could actually see, oops, I clicked the button. If you can actually see, there's a bunch of scenarios there, and you can sort of see, I'm pointing out that there's been like a tiny little dip in a particular measure. That measure is, do you guys know what Windows Snap is? When you snap a window to the side? That is the actual measure that's looking at that, and for whatever reason in that build, something, we added a tiny little bit into that code path, and it's changed the actual performance metric of that code path. So it's well within goal. It's not a problem. It's like a 1 millisecond change. But still, I mean, we want to make sure that the key scenarios keep working, so the insider community can keep giving us feedback. This is the feedback view. I mentioned this before around, for a flight, this is a very young flight, and we sort of say, okay, what's all the new unique stuff that's coming through from a feedback channel? What are the upvotes? What do we want to do with that sort of thing? Finally, there's also our services view. We're running a service. In fact, this is actually a subset of the services. We have services, we have incidents, we have alerts. There are like engineers on call that basically watch all this sort of stuff. And I like to see a green sheet here. It helps me sleep at night.
Yeah,
it only helps this man sleep at night.
That's right.
When you're asking, when's the new build coming? When's the next build coming?
Yeah. There's a lot behind the scenes in terms of what it takes to actually do even what seems like fairly straightforward things like the pop-up surveys that you get. We call those SIF, System Initiated User Feedback, and that's multiple services that we have to ensure are up running. We have a broker in the client that makes sure we don't ask you too frequently and bug you with those questions. So, and in fact, it's called a consideration, or
it's called the courtesy engine.
The courtesy engine to make sure that we're not annoying you with pop-ups. But all these things, even for simple things, they have to be really orchestrated well and working well. And this is something that FlightOps does every day to make sure that we can actually get flights out and get feedback back.
Or if something is hideously wrong, essentially all of our ops people are basically gathering and working through the challenge. Okay.
Yeah, so let's talk about the future a little bit. We get a lot of feedback about the program itself, and I know many of you have sent that feedback, so thank you for that. And we, of course, we look at all that feedback and have used it to make some changes to the program that you've already seen, as well as changes that are still coming. We did a survey in December for top things that, this is in the wrong order, that insiders wanted. And no surprise, more frequent builds showed up at the top here. This was December. We had announced we were going to go faster, and we hadn't actually sort of put our money where our mouth was yet. But that was the top thing that popped for insiders. I actually see a gentleman here that's got the "I'm going plaid" T-shirt somewhere. Oh yeah, here he is, right here. So ludicrous speed is still something that people want. The other thing was insiders wanted to be sort of better connected, better informed when we take action. We started this series of Feedback Hub posts, Insider Hub posts called Made by You that are sort of deeper stories about how we've looked at a collection or a range of feedback and have made changes to the product. But one thing that you'll see in 14295 is that the Feedback Hub now has the ability to actually have direct connection from Microsoft engineers. In fact, we've hooked up thousands and thousands of responses already to feedback that has been posted where we can tell you, yes, we know that's a bug, and yes, it's being fixed, or we're working on it in the future release, or here's a workaround, and lots of different ways that we can sort of connect back on individual pieces of feedback. And then actually, hold on.
It looks like that.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh.
Well, let's take it.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, it's all right. You good?
Well, I was going to talk about sort of social connection. We do have the insider community we really want it to be a great community where people can connect with each other. Events like this are part of it. We want to get people together. We're actually doing an insider meetup tonight. I'm going to tweet about later. So 8:30 at Schrader's Beer Hall. Heads up. So come and hang out and meet with fellow insiders.
Okay. So, as Gabe mentioned, the MS Responses feature is in. That's out there right now. It's basically, hey, like a message back around, this is what we're doing with this piece of feedback. Coming soon is additional commenting and the ability to sort of have a Microsoft engineer and insiders be able to sort of have a dialogue about a feature. And Gabe also mentioned the fact that so far we've had, if we look at the number of feedback items that actually have this response right now, we're a little bit over 63,000 feedback items in our database that have it. There's some other things that we're also doing that you've also actually already seen. Up until a couple of, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, we had the Feedback app and the Insider Hub. We've brought those two things together. so that if you're an insider, there's one place to go, one place to sort of understand new things in the build, to deliver feedback, to look at your dashboard, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that is being mentioned in some other discussions here this week at Build, which is actually quite pertinent to the Build audience, is that we're opening up the feedback system so that developers can essentially write code in their app, which launches the feedback experience right to their node so that you can basically get feedback on your app through our system. So you're leveraging the feedback system. And then inside Dev Center, you can basically pivot, look at that feedback, go back, ask for repro steps, and get a lot of feedback.
Auto-translated?
Auto-translate,
yeah.
That's right. And essentially, you get a lot of feedback on improving your app without impacting your ratings and reviews. And developers essentially have the option of leveraging this big machine that we've built for free, essentially. The other thing that a lot of developers have told us they like about this is that it also helps prioritize their backlog. Because when you sort of look at all this feedback and people are upvoting the feedback, you get a view of, what do people in this very broad community, what are they telling me about my app and the kinds of things I should invest in to make my app better? So we're super excited about this aspect of it. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So I thought I'd close out with a little bit about my personal adventure for the past 18 months as I started this program. One of the things that when we started the Insider program, that we sort of felt convicted of was we didn't want it to be a beta program with just some sort of corporate entity, the Microsoft beta program. But we wanted to actually have a person that would talk to people and would tell them what's going on and would be available to talk to them. And it sounded great, like on paper, we were convicted of this. But for me, it's been this really great personal journey as I've gotten out to spend time with people face to face and on Twitter and on various forums. And so I thought I'd close out with a little of my love for Windows Insiders. I'll start by talking about Twitter, because this has been a really powerful system for us. It's both a great reinforcing system for feedback. I can see things emerge very quickly. I can see, and in fact, here's an interesting fact. The Windows Update system, it's obviously built to move massive amounts of data, but the latency as a result of the feedback or the telemetry on Windows Update is about 6 minutes. So by the time when we publish a build, it takes about 6 minutes to get confirmation that it's been offered and has been triggered by someone for download. Conversely, when I announce that a build is available on Twitter, I can get within seconds somebody coming back with a photo of I'm downloading the build right now. And so it's actually, we press the button in FlightOps, and then everybody looks at Twitter.
What's happening in Twitter?
To see if people are actually getting the download. And then, of course, we go back to Windows Update and go, okay, let's confirm that everything's flowing the way you expect it to. But that first signal comes through Twitter, which is pretty remarkable. So for me, 18 months of Twitter. So September 2014, I had 6 followers. I think one was my mom. Certainly many were like the bots that just follow everyone. Not EdBot, the bot, but other bots that just follow everyone. And so I didn't really exist on Twitter. Today, I think I'm over 124,000 followers, which is just kind of crazy for me to think about. But really the interesting thing is the volume of sort of stuff coming at me every day that I really do my best to try to pay attention to. 261,000. This stat is like a day old now, so it's wrong. But over 260,000 tweets to me in that time frame. Almost 8,300 tweets from me back to people in that time frame. There's been 3 fake gay balls. All of them very nice people, I'm sure. And there's been 5 trolls that I've blocked in that time frame, which is pretty good, I think. I've only had to block 5 people. Mostly, folks on Twitter are a great group of people to talk to. It has taken over my work life. This is me doing the Twitter crouch in a meeting, and my vacation. This is me on vacation. My wife took this photo and then texted it to me. saying, get off of Twitter. But I'm super passionate about it. I want to be there. I want to be available for everyone to hear your feedback. The insiders have done some remarkable things with Photoshop. I actually have, for an internal version of this presentation, like 50 things that I show where they Photoshopped my head on stuff. All of it is flagrant copyright violation, so I can't actually show it at this venue.
Actually, I think they've also made videos of your head.
Videos. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. It's funny.
Crazy stuff.
But this one I can show because it's ours. And then there's also, I love this, there's a guy who did a set of icons for Windows 10, including the Gabe All icon, which now comes in Fat Yoda version, it comes in Barry White version, and it comes in Lego Head version, which is fun. And of course, my friends made beer glasses out of them naturally. But probably, then this is a fun one too. There's been lots of press. Like, because I'm out there talking about builds, I get lots of people that talk about the press. This is my favorite one, where I've had a lot of titles in my career, but Nerd Jesus is kind of takes the cake as titles go. So that was pretty fun. And then like I said, that I get to spend a lot of time talking with people and meeting people, and it's really great. This is my favorite Twitter moment, where this guy Adam, he's a student in New Zealand. And he sent this at Christmas last year, and it was just this really nice letter. He's been an insider every build on all of his devices, and he's now pursuing a career in computer science, and he's just really passionate about the program, and so that really to me was a really nice moment. And so with that, thank you. I hope everybody here is a Windows Insider. If you're not, insider.windows.com. Go sign up. Go get builds. Send us feedback. But we really appreciate you and all that you do. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.